Hey there. So let's talk about psychological demographics and then also different types of audiences. So a psychographic refers to the attitude, belief, anything psychologically that's going on with your audience that isn't a physical characteristic. And there's a number of different ways in which you can look at audiences and psychological characteristics. So first of all, there's attitudes. Basically, how does an audience feel? It can be about a certain topic. It can be about yourself. Just think about how an audience may feel. So, for example, there's a few different types of audiences. The first type of audience is a captive audience, an audience that has to listen to you, right? Think of whenever you were in school, especially in elementary and high school and middle school, when you were forced to go to school, right? You were a captive audience at the time. And because you were a captive audience, your teacher didn't have to do a lot to actually get your attention, right? You're not getting a lot of attention getters. You're not getting a lot of enthusiasm, right? You're technically still captive in college, but you do have a certain level of choice in the matter. And so, you can drop a class if you don't like it. Uh, Now, there are also voluntary audiences, audiences that are there on their own fruition, right? Think of like when you go see a concert, right? You volunteered, you paid tickets, right? I have a friend who got Taylor Swift tickets, right? She fought for those tickets, right? She really wants to go, right? And so that audience is going to be way more receptive to that speaker's message. And so if you're going somewhere and it's, a voluntary audience, they're paying or participating or even volunteering to go see you, and so they want to enjoy your message. And so if you're performing for a voluntary audience, obviously you have to be a little engaging, right? Taylor Swift has to go out and sing her best. A movie, if you don't like the movie, you can just walk out, right? Different types of audiences. There's also hostile audiences versus receptive audiences. You might have heard of preaching to the choir, right? When a priest or someone in a religious, like any religious leader, is preaching to their congregation, the group that is attending church, right? Not only is that a voluntary audience, right, but it's also receptive. Everyone has the same belief. If I'm Christian and I'm talking to all Christians, right, then they're all gonna receive my message the exact same, as opposed to what is called a hostile audience. A hostile audience is an audience that specifically the majority of them do not agree or understand or want you to be speaking, right? Which is a complete, like, this is such a hard thing to do, to address a hostile audience, is sometimes they won't even do it. So, for example, Donald Trump, a conservative president, he didn't come to California that much. He didn't go to Los Angeles to give a speech. Why did he not go to California to give Los Angeles to give a speech? Because Los Angeles is a largely, like, 70% Democratic county. And so why would he go where they're going to be actively hostile? Now, he did go to Bakersfield, though. Bakersfield is a notoriously, not notorious, it's not bad to be conservative, but like a famously conservative county. And so it's like 60% conservative out in Bakersfield. And so he went to Kern County and he spoke there. And that was the only county that he actually spoke at in California. Um, and so that's a hostile audience. So think about the different topics that you could have. For example, I talked about before, if you choose abortion, abortion is a very, you're going to have some people in there who are hostile audience members. Right? And that's how that's going to go. And so it should change how you speak. You should be trying to be as friendly as you can. Think about how, like, when Biden became president, right, he knew there was a lot of polarization, right? He knew, like, January 6th had happened, a number of different aspects had happened, right? And so he knew that it was a hostile audience, that people were watching just to hate him, right? People were hate watching him. And so he tried to be as friendly as possible, right? And that was part of the goal, right? uh, Values. What does a person value? And certain communities, based on your culture, based on your ideas, or even person to person, have different values. Do you value family? Do you value hard work? Right? As Americans, we actually have a value of hard work. So we like when people work hard. We typically don't like handouts. The concept of a handout is very negative to an American, right? The fact that someone just gives you something, right? Even if you pay for it or you earn it, or, right, it feels bad to be just handed something, right? I remember when I got my first paycheck, my dad was like, "How does that first paycheck feel? You earned that, right?" Like, that's the kind of culture we live in. Family is another big one, right? Depending on how some people like myself, I don't have a strong sense of family, right? My parents, I love them, they're nice and whatever, but I like if they, say something racist or sexist or homophobic, like I'll call them on it. Whereas for some people I know, they're like, oh no, you can never call out family. Like family is perfect. Like you have to be behind family no matter what, right? That's a sense of family that changes in values. Beliefs, religious beliefs. Religious beliefs are considered a psychographic. Are you, Muslim? Are you Christian? Are you a Hindu? Right? Are you Sikh? Whatever you are, right? That can influence. Are you Jewish? Right? And political ideology is also here. Um, political ideology can be pretty right. How do people feel? Right, we talked about how like Donald Trump is like aware of the political ideologies of areas, and he'll go and campaign in specific areas, right? um so famously, Beto O'Rourke, the Democrat in Texas, went to conservative counties to talk to them because he specifically wanted to target conservative counties who didn't like him, and he wanted to be as friendly as possible. um, Obviously we all have some form of political ideology, whether it's I don't believe in anything, I'm not in government, I'm a raging conservative, I'm a raging lefty, I'm a communist, comrade, whatever. Right? uh and so we all have these different perspectives, and so how do you communicate to an audience where you don't know everyone's identities, right? Maybe you have to be more neutral, right? I obviously speak in a more neutral way because I don't know, I don't want anyone to feel excluded, whether I'm a whether I'm joining Antifa, or whatever whatever political ideology that you have. I as a teacher have to be neutral, and so I try to speak in a neutral way. Maybe that helps for some people. Maybe you want to communicate in some way. Education is here as well. Think about a person's education level, the vocabulary that you're using, the kind of ways in which you're speaking. Typically, actually, in most settings, you're not supposed to speak at a college level. The way I'm speaking right now, using a lot of like terminology and stuff like that, this is not how I would speak to an average audience. I do this because I know y'all are like in college and smart, and you can handle a few advanced terms and things like that. But honestly, like you're not gonna. I don't talk like this in conversation. My girlfriend thinks I sound like an idiot when I talk, but I'm just talking to be accessible. And in fact, like presidents change their average. If you want to know, the average president speaks at an 8th grade level because that's one of the most accessible ways to talk. And so, for example, Donald Trump actually famously spoke at lower than an 8th grade level. He spoke at about a 6th to 7th grade level, and what we saw was a lot of people with low education actually liked the way he talked because he talked like them a little bit more, and so it actually helped him gain a larger following of people who could understand him a little bit more, as opposed to Obama, who spoke at like a 10th grade level, right? I think it was like 10th or 11th, right? I think Obama was a wonderful speaker, like eloquent, regardless of how you feel about the politics of President Obama, right? But he did speak in a way that was that did distance himself from like rural areas where education isn't the most important thing, right? I have friends and family who grew up in rural parts of Utah and rural parts, and I know like I met people who like are from rural parts of Bakersfield and stuff, and they're like, I don't care about my education. I don't get why the president is talking the way he does. I can't understand him, right? And so, if you want those people to vote for you, then you got to speak, in a lower education. And not saying that Donald Trump was good president, but I'm just saying how education talks is different, right? And how you communicate is important to understanding how people communicate and the different audiences that you're reaching. Okay. And so, yeah, that is psychographics and different types of audiences.